Welcome to Countdown to Infinity, a Marvel's Avengers podcast. We talk all things MCU, and I know we are a day late for a new episode. It's a holiday week here. We are about to be in the throes of Thanksgiving, and quite honestly, there hasn't been a ton of new MCU stuff. I know we just got Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. In fact, it's only a couple of weeks old and it's doing really well in the box office. But I thought it would be great if we answered some of the listener questions that y'all have been sending into our social media. And a lot of them are, around the next phase, some things that are super recent, some developments that have happened recently. So I thought for this holiday week, we talk about some of those questions and answer some of them. Of course, this is not necessarily a news pod, so a lot of these will just be opinions and things like that. But before that, I want to say my name's Emmanuel, and I am recording in a hotel room in Houston, Texas. So I don't have all of my great sound equipment, and great, I guess is subjective. I don't know if it is the greatest, but I'm recording from my hotel room using my AirPods. You may hear the AC go off, and you might hear a couple farts in there. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm not that gassy. But I'm going to answer some of these questions for you here, and then just a couple. We'll do like 5. This will be a short app. And then also, next week, next Monday, we will have a brand new episode going over Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special that they're releasing on Thanksgiving Day. We features Kevin Bacon, a lot of the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, so we'll be excited to talk about that. James Gunn, of course, is the new, I guess, co-CEO of DC Films, so DC Studios, so we're excited to see him kind of wrap up his Marvel stories with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think that the holiday special will play a part in that as well. But let's get into some of these questions. The first question that we got is very specific to news that broke over the weekend. And it's the question, will Bob Iger's rehiring affect the MCU? Now, if you don't know, if you're not on Twitter, and quite honestly, if you don't really care who the CEO of these giant companies are, then you may not have read that now I have to say former Disney CEO Bob Chapek was successioned over the weekend. If you've seen Succession, basically he was relieved of his duties as CEO of Walt Disney Company. It happened fairly quickly. It kind of blindsided a lot of people. The news was released on a Sunday night while the executives were at an Elton John concert. Apparently, and Bob Iger, the former CEO, who had been the CEO for decades, is returning to helm Walt Disney Company while he searches for a different successor, which is kind of wild. But Bob Chapek, his whole tenure has been kind of marred in some controversy. Of course, big shoes to fill for him. Bob Iger is I think one of the most charismatic CEOs. Sophia and I actually were in the same room with him once here in Houston, actually. But Bob Iger is back. How is that going to affect the MCU? I honestly don't think that much. I mean, in terms of the things that we see as viewers and as fans, I'll talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff, but I don't think it really changes too much, partially because there's so much happening in the MCU right now. You've got multiple shows in production, you've got multiple movies that are being written and edited, and I don't think it really changes the schedule much. I think one of the biggest things that is that we're going to feel is probably around quality. I think under Bob Chapek, the former CEO, most of the decisions were going to have to be approved by a small group of people that he supervised personally. And yesterday, Bob Iger already sent an email saying, we want to return a lot of the decision making and the financial decisions. We're going to return that to the creatives. So what that means is now Kevin Feige won't need a sign off for everything. Of course, he will have to, I don't think he gets to spend $1 billion whenever he wants, but it'll be nice. And I'm just going to go over some of the things that Chapek kind of was criticized for, and one of the earliest things was his kind of conflict with Scarlett Johansson, who's a huge part of the MCU as Black Widow. When Black Widow was released on Disney Plus instead of in theaters, or sorry, at the same time as theaters, that impacted her payday, and she had to sue, and there was a lot of issues happening behind the scenes, and Kevin Feige personally implored Bob Chapek, the former CEO, to resolve it, and behind the scenes said that he kind of maybe screwed that one up. And I feel like those types of issues, whatever happened with Iger, has a great relationship with a lot of the creatives in Hollywood, including actors and writers and directors, and of course, people like Kevin Feige who run his studios. So I feel like, I don't know how we're going to see it, but there will be a lot more support for Feige in Iger's return. Remember, Feige asked Bob Iger to move Marvel Studios under the supervision of Alan Horn at the time, the kind of the live action film department, because he did not want to be held. He didn't want his boss to basically be Ike Perlmutter at the former Marvel company, and then of course Disney bought Marvel. So there's a lot going on. I don't think, again, to answer the original question, I don't think Bob Iger's return to Disney will affect the MCU as much as we think, but it is going to be a different structure in terms of the support that Kevin Feige himself will have at at uh, at Walt Disney. But of course, like, who knows? Feige, he's a busy guy. He's working on a Star Wars movie right now, and who knows how long he'll be at Marvel. I think Iger will help keep him there a little bit longer, but so much of the MCU revolves around a small group of people and a small group of executives and producers who are just consistently putting out content. And by consistent, I mean 3 to 4 movies a year, 4 to 5 shows on Disney Plus, so that's a lot of content. But yeah, who's to know? Bob Iger will only be there for a couple of years. Who knows who his successor will be? It would be wild if Kevin Feige. Yeah, well, he doesn't have much corporate experience. I don't think he's going to be the CEO of Disney, but we'll see what happens. Okay, here is the next question. Will Black Panther Wakanda Forever win an Oscar? Now, that is really interesting. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, or sorry, the original Black Panther film actually won 2 Oscars. Oh wait, no, it won 3 Oscars. So I think that's a very valid question. It was nominated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Oscars. The original Black Panther, again, remember, if you're an Oscar head like me or like Brent, you will realize that there's something other than pretty controversial that happened around this time, and that's the Oscars and the people, really Bob Iger at Disney, they were really pushing for a best, I don't know if you remember this, a best popular film Oscar. They wanted a new category at the 2018-2019 Oscars. And they wanted, sorry, the 2018 Oscars, they wanted it to be called Best Popular Film. Well, the reason why they wanted that, I think, is because they thought Black Panther would win it. Can you imagine that? Like, in creating a new category just so Black Panther would win. But it was nominated for Best Picture. Popular Oscar didn't happen. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Production Design, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. And it won Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, and Best Production Design. So I honestly don't think this movie will be nominated for Best Picture just because of the competition this year. And I don't think it's going to be well, it could be nominated for sound editing or sound mixing, but remember now those categories are combined to Best Sound. So there aren't 2 individual categories. I think that's possible with Black Panther. I do think what's locked in, and this may, I mean, I'm not, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like Best Costume Design is locked. That's the award they won with Ruth E. Carter. I think that will win. I actually think it's going to win. I think it might win Best Original Score by Ludwig Göransson. I listened to a interview with Ludwig where he talks about having to find the ways to kind of recreate Mayan instruments and how much work went into finding these instruments in, you know, graves and in some like pictures and depictions, and they had to work with Mayan professors to recreate them. And so if you watch Black Panther Wakanda Forever, you hear a lot of Talokan's score, and you may think, oh, that's a really interesting noise, or that's a very different type of sound. And partially that's because you may have never heard that before, because those are real ish Mayan instruments. And I think Ludwig is going to be recognized for that. And he might win a second Oscar for a Black Panther movie, which is wild. I think Best Original Song is definitely possible. Now, two songs were oh wait no, all of the stars was nominated. There's two new songs attached in this movie by Rihanna. First new music in a really long time. First new music, is that what you say? Some new music from Rihanna. I think that might get a original song nom, and then best production design. I think that might happen as well. I mean, watch Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. There's a lot of production design in that, and it includes the costumes, of course. But even outside of that, the way that Talokan looks, the way that the new Wakanda technology looks, the way I don't think this is a spoiler. The way some of the caskets look, like there's a lot of work going on in production design. So to recap, I don't think it'll get a Best Picture nom, but I think it gets costume design, original score, production design, and maybe sound. But that's four Oscar noms, and I think two of them are wins. I think it's going to win original score and costume design. So for that question, is Black Panther going to get nominated for an Oscar, or will it win an Oscar? I think it wins two, to be honest with you, which is just kind of wild for a Marvel movie to win two Oscars. And it may do better than that. Who knows? Okay, next question is Kang the Conqueror, the big bad? I can't even answer this question. We've seen him in Loki. We're going to see him in Quantumania, but I don't know. I mean, we know there's an Avengers movie called the Kang Dynasty, so I think it's definitely possible that we're going to see a lot more of him, especially in this next phase. But I'm not sure. I really don't know. I mean, the first time we saw Thanos was, I believe, in the Avengers, and then for 7 years we got little hints of him coming in and out. So that was 2012, and we saw him in the Attack on New York. So 7 years, mind you, where we got little hints of Thanos, popping up, little gems here and there, little Infinity Stones happening across all these movies. I don't really know when Kang Dynasty comes out, but I don't think it's 7 years from now. Yeah, 2025. So that's 3 years. May 2nd of 2025. So in 3 years, we're going to have to set up Kang as one of the integral villains for all of the superheroes we've met. And mind you, we've introduced a lot more superheroes than ever before. So I don't know. Like, we'll see what Quantumania does, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more of him now that we're in Phase 5. Again, there's a lot of great stories being told in the MCU apart from Kang the Conqueror. I think, at this point, with a diverse storytelling that's happening now across mediums, I guess those 7 years with the original Avengers, there wasn't a TV show that also was working, like Kang was introduced in a series, Loki. There wasn't a series that Thanos could kind of be in at the time, and then also there's a lot more content being released right now. So although across 7 years we had a huge setup for Thanos and Endgame and Infinity War, 6 or 7 years, we have a lot more stuff coming out every year now. So instead of waiting 2 years for a movie, or just a couple movies every year, we've got all these shows and a ton of movies coming out. I will say it will reward people like you who watch all of it. I think if you don't, there's going to have to be some kind of remedial course that tells you, okay, if you don't watch Loki and you're confused about this guy that's in Ant-Man Quantumania, And now you're really confused when you have one of the Avengers films named after him. Here are the 5 or 6 things to watch, and that's why the pod is here. But also, I mean, it's going to be interesting how they do. But yes, I think Kang is going to be important. I think it's going to be a thing like Thanos, where Infinity War, he was a huge part of Infinity War, but then in Endgame, I don't think I need to do a spoiler alert here, but he's not that important in Endgame. He did what he did in Infinity War, and Endgame was really about the original Avengers resolving the snap or the blip, what Thanos did. And I think we might have something similar here. I don't see Kang just being this giant specter that everyone fights once. I think there's a lot to fix. I think since Kang, broke up the timelines, all these divergences are happening. There's a lot of fixes that need to happen. So I don't know. I assume there's some giant CGI Kang battle at the very end of this, but who knows? They could change it up. Another question is, what is going on in Phase 5? I think that's actually really similar to what I've been talking about with Kang. And that is, I don't know. I have no idea what's happening in Phase 5. We know the movies. We are not sure how they all connect. I am excited about a lot of the things that we're about to see. Um, uh, and I don't know necessarily, I don't want to go down a list of all the things that are going to come out between now and 2024, but this includes TV shows. Okay. So, and the return of Daredevil, like that's part of Phase 5. A lot of TV shows in this, and then Blade, introductions of new things. But we're going to get a new Captain America. We're going to get new Guardians. We're going to get a new Captain Marvel. Definitely new Ant-Man. We're going to get Thunderbolts in terms of movies, and then a ton of shows, returning shows like Loki, Echo. We kind of saw a little bit of Riri Williams. We'll get Ironheart, Agatha, Coven of Chaos. I accidentally went over everything. Secret Invasion. But there's a lot happening in Phase 5. I'm just along for the ride. So I would say, enjoy it and turn off the part of your brain that wants everything to connect, because at this point it's kind of impossible with the MCU. There's just so much happening. But I'm looking at this list and going back to Kang the Conqueror, Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is here. We'll definitely see some Kang. It's possible we see some Kang in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Not 100% sure where that happens, but we're also getting Season 2 of Loki, where we know Kang is a huge specter in that. So there's 2 or 3 things here where we'll see more Kang. For all you Kang heads waiting to see Jonathan Majors, there's a lot of Kang happening. And we don't have to wait that long. I mean, Quantumania comes out in months. Okay, we're not talking about like waiting an entire year. That movie is coming out in February of 2023, December, January, 2 months. Just wait 2 months, everyone, and you'll see some more Kang. Okay, final question is really interesting. I'm excited about this question. I am sort of skeptical about how it's going to be executed. But here's the question: when will we see the X-Men in the MCU? I don't understand this question fully, because we've been seeing some X-Men in the MCU. We've even been seeing kind of the Fox X-Men in some of the MCU in cameos, mind you. But I'll go over some of these examples. Like, we've already seen Spider-Man, who joins the X-Men at some point. I get that that's like a technicality, but we've also seen Quicksilver and WandaVision, and we heard the X-Men theme song in Miss Marvel when they talk a little bit about Inhumans or mutants. But we've also seen Professor X. Like, Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart, is in Multiverse of Madness. And that, I think, was a big cameo, of course, but, it shows Marvel's, I guess, comfortability with the Fox X-Men. They're not necessarily going to recast them all. I'm sure, like, we've introduced variants and stuff like that, but we got Professor X in here, and there was just an announcement that um, uh, Wolverine is going to be in Deadpool 3, and it's the Hugh Jackman Wolverine. And I know Deadpool 3 kind of existed before the MCU, but that's technically in the MCU, and they okayed that. There's also there's some really small things too that we had written down here. I think in She-Hulk there was a headline that said "Man fights with metal claws in bar brawl." Man fights with metal claws in man fights with metal claws in bar brawl. Interesting, but that sounds like Wolverine to me. So I think we're going to see a little bit more X-Men. Again, technically, a lot of the people we've already seen are X-Men. I don't know necessarily, though. I think this question really is asking, when will we see Professor X, not Patrick Stewart, or maybe Patrick Stewart? When will we see Professor X gather a group of mutants and form an X-Men group, an X-Men group? I don't know when that happens. I actually don't think that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 phases to see an actual X-Men movie. I think we'll see mutants sprinkled throughout. Namor is also a mutant now that Black Panther Wakanda Forever has come out. So I think we're going to see mutants happening. Again, I think, it's all because of some of the stuff that's happening in Loki that we've already seen, like, where's this bangle from? Where are the 10 rings from? Like, I think there's all kinds of things that they're introducing to our universe that will create mutants, and then there will be some sort of, existential threat to them. I think they're going to separate it a little bit from Fox. It seems like it's going to be a little more lighthearted. I mean, Wolverine and Deadpool, that's the most, I think, irreverent franchise you can throw him into. So I think we're going to have a little bit more fun with X-Men in this iteration. But, I think there's some things that definitely make X-Men different, and I hope that they lead into a lot of that stuff too, but not too far from an X-Men movie. But we're already seeing a lot of mutants in the MCU, and I'm excited for that, and I hope you're all excited for that as well. Okay, so those are the 5 questions that we decided to answer this week. Keep sending us questions. You can email us or you can send us a message on social media at DelphinPod. I'll do a better job of checking that, DELFINPOD. You can support the pod at patreon.com/DelphinPod, or you can actually email us at info@delphinpod.com, or you can just, I think it's also Gmail. So you can just email delphinpod@gmail.com if you have questions. And we may do this more often. I think this is really fun. And I think that, as we are in between shows and movies, we can report about news, but who knows, news changes, especially when it comes to like film production news, or we can answer some of your questions. So keep sending us questions. Thanks so much for listening to Countdown to Infinity. Make sure to rate and review it and share it with all of the people that you like. Don't share with people you don't like. And we will see you next week after you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, the special that's coming out on Disney+. Sophia will be back on. We'll talk about that. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.